everybody. My name is Teresa Kitchens, and we are here today talking about insurance. What a shock! But we have an amazing person with us here, Aurora Mullett, a good friend of mine, and she is the insurance queen in California. She does such a great job. She knows the market. She knows all the ins and the outs. She's been in this space forever, but also we're going to take it and we're going to be talking about specifically some of those challenging things that are going on nationwide today that she also can be able to make sure that we have a good point of discussion with. We have Aurora Mullett today, and she is with Sky Insurance Brokers out of California. So, Aurora, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am excited. And, I know that everybody's always, I have had so many clients actually come to me in the past couple weeks, and everybody's talking about insurance rates going up. They've been talking about it for a long time. It's across the board, across the United States, everybody's insurance rates are going up. Everybody's talking about it. But I think now that we have these huge wildfires that have been going on in California recently, I've got clients coming to me saying, now what's going to happen to my insurance rates, and we're kind of like, we don't know, it's too early in the process, but obviously it's not going to be good. So I think as we go into these questions and into these types of conversations that are going on, I think there's a lot of really worried consumers out there about what that means for them, as well as what that may mean for the insurance industry. Where are we going? What are we doing? All of those good things. So tell us a little bit about your background with Sky Insurance Brokers, and tell us a little bit about what you're seeing over there right now.
So I'm a managing partner at Sky Insurance. This is now my 28th year in insurance.
Wow.
From all other aspects. So I've done claims, I've done underwriting, sales, you name it. So I've been through every gamut of the insurance industry through my years. I am primarily based out of California, like you said. And so my specialty is really working not only with the consumers in the wildfire space, but also the insurance companies, creating legislation, advising on legislation to help improve and solidify the California market, which is a lot harder than you would think it should be out
here.
California.
There's like all sorts of craziness going on in California. Whenever like clients come to me and they're like, oh, we're doing this, this, and this, and we're going to go be in California. I'm like, California, Florida, and New York, I'm staying away from. So you are a better woman than me. And, I'm always like, you know what? I don't know for sure if that's really my space. There are better people like you who know the market. I just feel like you have to have an expert in those areas, because without it, I think people are not adequately taken care of. I don't really know how to put that. I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody who's in California in any way, shape, or form. It's just such a specialty market, I think.
It is. And it's very, the California Fair Plan, which is pretty much the main insurance company out here now, until Paradise, you really didn't see it, right? I had maybe 4 or 5 policies on my books. I couldn't even tell you how many customers we have with the California Fair Plan now. Right. But it's not only within my agency, but especially since State Farm, left the market almost 2 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been almost 2 years here. But you've had an inundation of agents that are now having to write the California Fair Plan. But the problem is they don't know how to write it. And so what happens is we're especially seeing this now with the LA fires coming out. There is just an enormous amount of consumers that had little or no coverage, and it was 100% the agents. They didn't know what the contract read. They didn't know how to write it. They didn't know the specifics of how you write a policy. There's a lot of nuances to the California Fair Plan when you're dealing with APN, total insured values that are allowed. When you're dealing with like if you have a guest house and it has a kitchen, that requires its own policy. And agents weren't doing that. And so they were putting it as another structure. And then you have an entire 1,500 square foot guest house that has no coverage now, because there is no allotment except for a deduction, which it's pretty bad. So we're going to see even a more greater shift, I think, into consumer-based protection where it comes from agents on that front line. There's going to be a lot more basically limitations on who can access these programs, what kind of education they have to be able to access this program to sell to consumers in the future. So it's going to be like you said, we don't know what's going to happen. We have a pretty good forecast from insurance companies where they're standing. We have companies like State Farm that are on the verge of having to pull out. They've asked for emergency rate because of these fires. And it's going to be very interesting to see where the carriers land, where their financial stability lands at the end of this, who remains in the marketplace, and who just says, like Florida, we're just done. We can't maintain this any longer.
Right, right. So why do you think why do you think that the agents or the people that are taking care of the clients, right, are not writing the policies in the right way? Is it just that they don't know that the fair plan has these nuances about them? Have they not had the training? Is it that they need to make more of an effort? Is it the carrier, the fair plan needs to make more of an effort? Is it that we maybe, and I'll tell you, in Texas, we have the fair plan, and we haven't needed it, I think, in a lot of ways, but we've needed it the last few years. And so it's kind of one of those things that I think a lot of agents kind of keep in their back pocket in a lot of states, and they don't write it unless, in Texas, it's the insurer of last resort, right? Like, you don't want to go there unless you absolutely have to. But I think sometimes we don't do the training. We haven't gotten in there because in our minds, it wasn't a first priority of being able to make sure, like maybe some of the bigger carriers, the standard line carriers, why is it that people don't know those nuances about how to be able to write a policy with the fair plan?
So a lot of it is lack of training. It's when I say the inundation, you had almost 30,000 brokers in a matter of 3 months having to start writing the California Fair Plan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so when that happened, you had an inundation of two things happen. The California Fair Plan changed their policy rating system at the same time that State Farm pulled out, and all these people were trying to get appointed in and to write this thing. So you have a very simplistic system that we left into a Duck Creek system. And if you've ever worked with Duck Creek, you know the challenges with Duck Creek. But essentially what happened is that we held seminars, but agents don't attend seminars.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, how hard could it be? And then they jump in there and they don't look at contracts. They don't look at resources. I'm a blunt person. Their ego prevents them from reaching out to people to ask for help.
Yep.
So it's been it's been a huge struggle. Now, myself and another gentleman out here, we volunteer our time for California Fair Plan. So we are there and we're open. We run seminars for agents. We run agent chats, like Q&A chats all day long. If they're having a struggle, I'll jump on Zoom calls. Like, we do that, and we do it again just because we need to make sure that the community is protected. But it's very alarming on some of the basic questions that they just have never read the contract and they don't understand how. And we're talking about a 22-page contract, right? This isn't. It's not like you're going to a novel and you got to spend a week. You could read it very quickly to do it, but we've lived in a land for insurance agents where it was quick. You could jump into a rater system. You could put in the information. The company did the things for you. And with California Fair Plan, that's not the case. Everything is scheduled. If you do not schedule it, you do not have it. Wow. And so if you leave it off, then, you just have this giant gap. And I think that agents don't know the basic concepts of insurance, like the difference between loss of use, fair rental value, co-insurance clauses. So that's the portion of it that we have to really get good at in California, and holding the agents to a certain level of education to be able to access the program that is needed right now to make sure these people can rebuild. Because we're going to see a mass amount of individuals that just do not have enough coverage to rebuild after these fires down there.
Wow. So how can the Fair Plan, because thank you so much for volunteering your time and doing all that, because I know that is crucial. Because this is huge for a lot of people, and just huge, absolutely huge. So how can the Fair Plan, or how can the Fair Plan make sure that people know what it is that they're doing? Can they require education, or require that everybody has to be able to go through some of these classes or whatever? I know sometimes I get emails from carriers saying that it's required that you take one of these 4 episodes of courses as we roll out with this new product or whatever. I don't know that I've ever had anybody come back at me and say, hey, you didn't go, but I think I've gone to all of them too. So, I mean, is there any way? Because, I mean, like you said, when State Farm left the state, right, there were so many people that needed insurance so fast that it became this onslaught of, I'm sure, probably like chaos, people trying to find insurance, figure out what's going on, how can they get good coverage? And I'm sure people just didn't have time. And like you mentioned, they didn't even have an appointment maybe with the fair plan at that point, and they were having to be able to dig into it while they're trying to service the client. How can the fair plan be able to make sure that the agents get that education that they need?
Well, we definitely saw after the LA fires being down there, because we haven't seen a fire to this magnitude here in California. And so they've recognized that there's a huge gap, even more of a gap than we even realized before. Now, unfortunately, our illustrious insurance commissioner said that that would be too restrictive on agents to make them get like they do with flood, right? Like you can't sell flood until you get your flood certificate. But they felt that that would be too hard on agents and too restrictive on agents. So he said, no, we can't do that. Now we're going to push through. And I say we're, because I'll say that a lot on there because I work so closely with this. But that's going to be coming down the pipe. It's no longer going to be, you can't say no to this. This is needed for the community. You represent the community. Get out of the way. This is happening. It's going to be a requirement that you cannot access the program, right? And I don't know how extensive it's going to be if we had our ask. Our ask is you have to take this once a year to be reauthorized. And this, every single login will have to do it. You'll have to upload your certificate. You'll have to do that or you lose access. And there is the difference between being able to write and being able to service. Okay. So they will have the ability with this in this programming to say you can service your policy, but you can't write a new policy. Right? Okay. And so really they have no other choice. So an agent is going to go through that process. Now the key is to figure out who's going to create that, that education program, what it's going to look like, but at least it's something. Yeah. And then we're going to continue to do agent, webinars and go out. We found really a greater success, oddly. And I think it's because people have to actually leave their office, commit to coming in, versus where if they're sitting at their thing and they get a phone call, they'll get distracted. It's easier for somebody to walk away from a webinar than it is an in-person class. So I know that's one of our aspects of wanting to do a lot more of these in-person classes. So you can have Q&A sessions live. You can get really more in-depth into the weeds of what's needed as opposed to trying to structure, slides and go through that. Yeah.
So what's the percentage, do you think, of agents that have, especially the California Fair Plan? Again, they're in multiple states, but what do you think the percentage of agents right now are that have pursued whatever training is available, like your webinars, your trainings, things like that? I mean, how many people are doing what it takes to get that education on their own?
God, if I'm being generous, I'd say maybe 40%.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Well, it's just crazy. So, but how many states is the fair plan in? So let's take that conversation, because this podcast is not specific about California. In no way, shape, or form is that a situation where we think it's isolated, right? Where the California plan is totally. I mean, I'm sure it's different from the other states because every state has their own plan, their own concept, right? But at the same point, how many fair plans are there across the country? How many states have the fair plan? And are all the fair plans kind of the same? Are they all kind of like or is it run by the state? Each state kind of does their own thing. How is it kind of like an overarching company that kind of moderates the different states and how they enact their fair plan? Or kind of what's the backbone on that a little bit? Because I'd like to know kind of the management and or kind of the upper echelon of how that kind of comes about in each state.
Yeah, so each one of them is different. There's 33 of them currently. So there's still a large segment of the United States that does not have a fair plan. The fair plan is set up and initiated in a couple different ways. But ultimately, the Fair Housing Act kind of struck that first chord back in 67, 68, when you had the Watts riots here and other things that kind of just funneled out across the United States. So a lot of states started that. And it's basically based off of what is the peril that is in problem for that state. And that's generally where they're going to base that around. So in Florida, it's wind. You've got fire here. You've got fire, wind in other areas of the states. But it's really that's what they based it off of. And so to create it, it's almost 100% ran by the departments of insurance in each of the states. And how you have to start there now, right? Before it was a legislative act. Now it's if you want to create one in your state, you have to actually start the process. You've got to go to the Department of Insurance. You have to start to have that conversation. They're going to give you the steps of what it needs. Generally, it is you need to prove that there's a problem. So you either need to have cases from consumers that say, I cannot find insurance in the regular market, or you have to have enough data as an agent to bring in and say, here are consistent cases where these sections of this state are not able to get insurance because of X, Y, and Z. So you have to build that case. You have to create the white papers.
Okay.
You've got to create the legislation in the state. You've got to go through a lot of steps to get to that. And Shane Eastman recently posted this meme on his page, and this is what really kind of struck this chord for me. And it said that, the insurance companies are not the villain, they're the canary. And the canary started to sing and tell us that there was a problem for many, many years. And as agents, our canary was Florida, and then it was Texas, and then it was California, then Louisiana, all of the coastal states. And as agents, I think that a lot of us went there and said, well, what can I do? What is it that I can do? I'm at the mercy of these insurance companies. And you are to an extent, but you aren't in the fact that you have a set of skills and a set of knowledge that the average citizen doesn't have. They don't understand the industry. They don't understand the need. They don't have the ability to forecast where this marketplace is going like an insurance agent does. And if you sit there and say, there's nothing I can do about it, then before you know it, you have a state like Nevada that has wildfire issues that are coming into play. They don't have a California FAIR plan. The admitted options that are struggling in other wildfire states are now adopting the same fire model scorings that they do in those states to Nevada. The non-admitted options that are very minuscule there are also taking on so much risk elsewhere. It's the same bucket of money. And so you have a state that is all of a sudden in this year having entire communities that have no insurance options, and nobody has started this process. And so that is kind of my goal with this, is to get insurance agents, to get legislators across the United States, that even if you don't 100% need the FAIR plan now, it's going to happen. This is a domino that is going to happen.
So I think that what I'm hearing, and I just want to make sure, is that it has to be initiated by either agents or people within the state to be able to say, hey, we need a FAIR plan. So this is not like a private entity like Travelers or Safeco or whatever that, okay, some big company starts up a new insurance agency or company or whatever, a carrier. But so this is something that as a consumer, as an agent, or as an interested party, I'm assuming, lawyers maybe, I don't know, can go to the state and say, hey, we need it, but they need to make sure they do their due diligence because they have to prove need for it, which is that part of the reason why it's only in 33 states is because, number one, people haven't initiated it. And then maybe number two, maybe they haven't had as consistent of maybe huge losses where carriers are backing out of the state or backing out of certain areas or territories. They haven't had that urgency maybe in the past.
Correct. Yeah. So the states that needed it, or the states that were proactive in a lot of a lot of earthquake states, you'll look at it, those were a lot of where those bases were, because it was the same thing that happened in California where the earthquake was combined. And when the companies didn't want to offer earthquake, it kind of pushed forward to say, okay, well, we need to create something so people can get loans.
Right.
We need to have something so that they can have insurance. So if you have states that aren't high on earthquake risk, aren't high on flood risk, aren't high on fire risk, that there was still enough that the insurance companies had that they felt that they could still remain there, then it wasn't a need. And now it's become you don't have a lot of the grassroots initiatives in communities like you used to years ago. right? There's a different shift, and I don't want this to be, I don't, I don't want, how do I say this? There's no nice way to say this. There is, there is a
Well,
definite
you tried.
shift
So we appreciate
in,
that. Thank you.
yeah,
We appreciate the
but
fact that you tried.
the level of knowledge, the level of commitment into especially the insurance business, right? These were large firms. These were people that they were very into rates. They were very into protection, and it got commoditized over the years. And so instead of having insurance agents, you have insurance processors. And
Mm.
so when you have that going on and people don't take the time to learn the industry that they are in because it was such an easy industry to get in, you created this fracturing of the community-based agents that are looking out for something other than just what's immediately in front of them.
Yeah.
And so that lack of community involvement has really kind of created this in the kind of like I said, hands off of, well, we're just one agent, right? There, what can I do? And I
Mm.
have this conversation a lot because and I try to explain to them that the fair plan wasn't always as robust here as it is now, right? And it was agents like myself that said, no, there's a need for this. And we went to the Capitol and we walked down the halls and I hate hills. And you can't go into the Capitol and no one's going to take you seriously, right? So I'm having to chase people down on you know, in heels and saying, no, I'll walk you to your car, right?
Mm.
And it takes that amount of work to get in front of the people who have the ability to strike the change that you need in your state.
Mm.
And you have to knock down those doors, and you have to know and recognize that you may never get credit for it, right? If you go and look at any of the wildfire legislations that are in California, you're not going to see my name on that. But if you go back down the chain, it's eventually going to lead to me, groups that I'm involved with.
Right.
But you have to have that ability to say, my ego comes out of this, and I am fighting for my agency. I am fighting for my future. I am fighting for everything that I've built. Because if these things are not created, if you don't create these backup plans for yourself, then you end up in a situation like Nevada agents are going to see themselves in, where they have no markets, they have nothing that they can do, and they just literally watch their book of business dissolve around them to direct carriers that might still be in business, right? If you don't create the alternatives that you need to keep success in your agency, then you become a victim of it. And that's what we have to prevent for ourselves out there right now.
See, and I don't think that a lot of agents know that they can enact change like that, because I mean, we have our territory reps that come on out and talk to us, right? We have people that come in and chit chat with us. We go to all our little like meetings, where they have Danishes out and coffee in the morning, and then we have our lunch, and they all, everybody checks off their boxes, right? They went to their carrier rep and they've done this, but I've never really thought. I mean, I've thought about getting involved at the state level, but I mean, to me, that's like what your state organizations, like I'm in Texas, so IAT or whatever your state organization does. But I never thought of it even as an individual. Um, if I really wanted to get involved, I guess in my mind, I would go through those organizations like IAT or whatever it might be that has their legislative branch and all of that, which is a great organization to be a part of. Your state organization, that's definitely where you need to be at. But then I didn't ever think about the other organizations maybe that, that are a part of that legislation piece and being able to be having a voice, and that it really has to come from being that risk advisor, being able to be more than just, like you said, a processor. And I think the carriers have come on out and they want business, they want growth, they want this, they want that, especially up until the last few years, that we felt so much pressure on the sales side that we have to have so many quotes, we have to have so many sales, or we have to have so much growth, right? That a lot of times I think we haven't been as much a part of our community in the legislative side because it's a time issue. We don't know where to go. We don't know what to do. And a lot of our state organizations have an organization about it. And I think, oh, they'll take care of it in my mind. But you're right. People have to be a part of those organizations to make those areas work. And I don't know. I guess I'm just sitting here thinking I'm a little ashamed of myself that I haven't really gone that direction yet, kind of to be a part of the solution and not necessarily just part of the processing problem.
Well, and I wouldn't say, I wouldn't put any shame on anybody, right? Like it wasn't, it wasn't like I woke up one day and said, "Oh, I can do this," right? I hate government. I
Right.
mean, you know me long enough. But I am really good at explaining things to the
Mm,
people who love government. And so if they come to me and they say, we want to work on this white paper, it becomes an advisory role for me, right? I can take an hour or 2 hours and give them the information, and then they go and they do the rest of that heavy lifting. They sit in their Senate committees, and they go through and do all of that portion, the lobbyists, everything that you have there, right? And so when I say like get involved, it's not that I'm 100% taking everything from one point to one point, but I do make a very big step to start the conversations and
mm,
to learn who in our executive bodies are those people that are focused on the issues that we have with insurance, create a conversation between us, continue to feed them information. Prop 103 is a big one, right? From here, if you don't know, that's really why the collapse of the insurance market happened here in California was Prop 103. And so in 2017, I started the initiative. We started an insurance grassroots solution team out here. And I just kept going to, I started at my board of supervisors, right? I didn't know where to start back then. I just knew
mm.
that I had to get somebody to start listening and know. And at the beginning, I was told I was an alarmist, I was a conspiracy theorist. This was never going to happen. California was too big to fail.
Oh
Why
my
do I want to
goodness.
scare people like this? Prop 103 was there to protect people. It would never be amended. And now here we are in 2025, and Prop 103 is being amended. And I think the biggest message I can have is you're going to hear no a lot. And you got to treat that no just like you would a no from a prospect. When you know it's the best thing for yourself, for your community, for everything, you've got to push through and know that you're doing the right thing and just continue to harp on it and continue to push forward. Because again, like I said, if we don't do that, if we don't have more agents getting involved, then we are looking at not only a collapse of insurance in California, we are looking at a nationwide collapse, because these companies, though they've been very smart, right? If you look at State Farm, they can say, well, we created an underwriting company for California and we have financials and we have all this separate, but ultimately it goes to the parent company,
Yeah.
right? And it's ultimately the same money and the same reinsurance, and it if they take reinsurance in that California underwriting company, that's going to affect everything else. And the same thing rings true for Travelers and every other, nationwide company that is out there, that there's only so much money and there's only so much risk. And I think it was Carrie, I tried to send a lead to Carrie, and I never would have thought of her state as having any issues with insurance, right? That's not
Right,
even a
she's
state.
in Ohio, right?
Ohio. It's
Yeah.
not even a state. Like, I'm like, okay, maybe some wind, some
Shout out
hail
Barry
issues, right?
Reynolds. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But it was very interesting to me that I sent her a lead and she said, well, is it near me? Right. And I deal with nationwide mortgage companies.
Uh huh.
So it doesn't matter where in Ohio, right? Like they
Yeah.
can send me a lead in California today, send me one in Texas. I mean, you see how many I send over to you, right? So it I was like, well, I don't know, where are you at, so it was like I would have never thought that this was an issue. And she was explaining that if it's not within an hour of them, they're not allowed to write it.
See, I would
And
never have thought about that because in Texas we don't have that problem at all. Like we can write anywhere in the state of Texas. I mean, so I did not know they were geographic. Is it the carriers that are geographically binding them to an hour?
yeah, like it's they because of certain inspection guidelines and all these things. And so that's what I say, like the canary is singing right now. The canary is screaming right now. And if agents don't start realizing that if they don't take action now, it's going to be such a bigger problem, and it's going to start touching into state by state by state. You already can't ride across state lines for a lot of carriers. They're getting very big on having risk advisors again that are tied into the communities that they are writing, and not just out there writing in 50 states. So this domino is going to just continue to keep
Wow.
exploding.
Well,
out
and I
there.
think especially, and like we had talked about, the market's been in this hard market for a while now, 2, 3 years. I mean, you look at the bell curve, right? And we're kind of coming out of it ish. It'll never go back. Um,
Never.
I've had people ask me, are we going to go back to previous premiums or coverages? Or one in Texas, we went to a 2% deductible this year, whereas or last year, end of last year, and are we going back to a 1%? No, we are not. Never, ever, ever. And that's never, ever going to happen. Um, but I think that we also have to prepare people for there will be more changes coming, just like we're seeing with the wildfires out in California, like we're seeing with Florida that got hit really hard this year. We saw in Tennessee, the earth movement flooding where there wasn't even supposed to be flooding, right? And all this other stuff. We're seeing global warming. I know that there is areas of Illinois that got hit by a couple tornadoes at one point that they were not accustomed to. Like they just did not have that up there. And now I know there are areas up there that they can't write in pockets of, the country where they are having these, I hate to say the word pop up, but like random tragedies, random things that are coming up that they've never encountered before. So as we're seeing that spread, our carriers then are saying, hey, we're not going to write in this area. Hey, we're not going to do this. But the idea that maybe those people, those states haven't started yet to be able to have that fair plan is really, really scary because we're seeing that already across the board, that there are lots of areas where carriers are backing out. And I don't know that they're going to go back in. And if they do, it's not going to be anytime soon. And if they don't have these fair plans, I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah. And they're not going to start it, right? Because the basis of the fair plan is that it's pooled risk, but
Right.
it's backed by the insurance company. So if they're pulling out of an area, the last thing they want to do is be like, hey, Aurora, do you want to go start a fair plan in Ohio for me? Right? Because no, that just means that they get a portion of that risk back that they're trying to get off.
Mm,
And so when I say like it is 100% onus on agents in the community to demand this and create this, and then the agents have to go another step, which is to start lobbying for the difference in conditions policies, whatever limit or way that that may look within the carriers. It takes a while for a carrier to create a new product or to want to create a new
yeah.
product. I mean, they're buried in claims, they're buried in trying to survive with the current thing. So to start those conversations, it's a now thing, and you have to define in your state where's the problem area and start looking at that and see. And there's always going to be I always say, like, start with regional carriers, because a lot of times regional carriers have greater access and time to navigate their book and create products and to be able to dive down into state specific or areas within that state. So if you start those conversations with the regional carriers, then you get a footprint. You only need one carrier, right?
Mm,
One carrier is going to create the product that's going to put it into the SURF filings, which then becomes public information to all other carriers. That then that carrier says, oh, well, we can just mimic that product then, right? Hey, lab, let me just send this filing over to our product department, see how long it can take. But you always have to get that one. You got to get that one legislative person that is willing to stand up with you. You got to get that one group of advocates in your state. You got to get that one insurance company, that one insurance like marketing agent. You've got to find that starting point that you can build off of. Otherwise, you'll just spin your wheels on it.
interesting. Interesting. So, if people wanted to be a part of an organization that does this type of thing, right? Because obviously it takes a group of people, right? It takes more than one person, especially if you are in sales or you have a job in insurance or you run an agency or whatever it is that somebody may be doing. What organizations would you recommend? Would you recommend they go to like their state organization, or are there other organizations that are trying to be able to set up these fair plans in the various states that maybe have a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more history behind them on how to be able to do this, so that way people aren't quite as alone in that process if they want to jump on board?
Yeah, I mean, your state program, I think, is absolutely a good jumping start for you, but to create a subcommittee within that, because as you said, I mean, these committee members, they're agents, right? Most all of them are agents. They're facing the same time challenges that you are, but they all have one thing in common: they are willing to donate their time. They are willing to have those conversations. They are willing to advocate. So those are always your best steps. And again, find one person in there that wants to create a subcommittee and start from there, where you focus just on that fair plan, not as a whole, but just
Right.
creating that fair plan portion of it to start the conversation. Then you have like consumer groups like United Policyholders, getting those involved. Triple I is a good one that I don't think a lot of people realize the knowledge and the connections that Triple I has.
Okay.
So if you join Triple I, then that's going to give you a lot of the background, a lot of the statistics that you need. So if you go to Triple I, you can pretty much type in any state and get a lot of what the loss trends are in that state, what the common issues are in that state. So there's a lot of knowledge at your fingertips that you can absorb so that you can start to build that case for whatever committee that you start. But a lot of it is going to be finding individuals that are just as passionate about it as you are to create a lot of grassroots, right? You're going to have some people that are willing to pound the pavement with you.
Yeah, yeah. So then what about for people that are in a state that they already have a fair plan? Maybe they would like to be a part of helping or changing or developing, because like we said, the world is changing in general. I'm not an alarmist. I'm not a huge global warming, problem person. In general, I think the earth has been changing for bazillions of years, my personal opinion. We're no longer in the ice age, right? So obviously there have been changes as we go, but that's just me. I'm not trying to get political or anything. I'm just saying, from my perspective, since I'm in Texas, if I want to be a part of what's already going on in the state of Texas for the fair plan, how do the same organizations, the same committees and so forth, do they then, after the original fair plan is established inside of a state, do they then stay on the same committees, or is there a different approach for those states that already have a fair plan? Is there a different approach maybe for being a part of making sure that you're a part of that, I don't know, conversation as our economy and as our insurance carriers are changing? Because we've seen so many changes over the years. I'm sure fair plan's going through the same stuff.
Yeah, it's really going to be based off of how that fair plan was created. Was it created through legislation? Was it created through, just joint with the insurance? Because there are a couple states that do have insurance company-based fair plans. So you really want to figure out who controls that mechanism within the fair plan for your state.
Okay.
And then it's, for me, I became a problem, right? I became the person that kept calling and kept reaching out and kept trying to figure out who at the fair plan do I need to meet? Who do I need to have that conversation with? And so eventually I did. And through that allows me to, volunteer my time with them, to advocate for them out into the community. So you've got to find that door that, and most of the fair plans aren't busy like like Florida is or California is. Most of them don't see a lot of traction. And most of them have just been plugging along because there isn't a great need to expand it. So if you want that expansion of coverage, if you need it, and I know a lot of the fair plans need the expansion of coverage, they need better technology, they need better processes, all of those things. So that takes funding. It's not, like I said, sometimes legislative action. So you've got to get prepared to, I always, find grant writers, find a grant writer in your community, because grant writers know the language that is needed, and they're going to be one of the first people that's going to be able to help you write a white paper to change a legislation in your state. Nice. And they're going to know what sources of funding. I mean, so it's that granular when you're looking at the big scheme of who are those key people that you put in there. But most of it is just figuring out what's that mechanism that makes your fair plan, what is it missing, and then what steps you have to take to broaden it so that it becomes a more useful tool for yourself and for your clients.
Wow. Well, I am so thankful that the state of California has had you to be able to come on in and be able to help out, you and all the people that have been doing it. Because I know you, like you said, you've been doing it for years. And the people that are going to be okay right now with the fair plan, with the way that it is, and in the ways that it is, because nothing's perfect. I totally get that. I think we had a little bit of that conversation earlier. But by you doing that, you've made that fair plan so much better for all those people out there and all those people that are going to need it as they move forward. Because we're not done with all the trials and tribulations of insurance by any stretch of the imagination. It's just going to keep on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
It will be. It will be. Well, Aurora, if people want to reach out to you, if people want to connect with you a little bit, maybe ask you questions about how maybe they can get involved or what maybe direction they should be able to take for some of this. How can somebody reach out to you and be able to connect?
My email is the best. So just Aurora at Sky Insurance Group. And Facebook, I mean, I get a lot of Facebook messages too. So it's really just ping me, let me know what it is. We can set up a time. Generally, I also say like my time is limited. So there are some times where someone will reach out and I'll be like, I can talk to you right now for the next 20 minutes. Right. Or it's not going to be probably for a week. So just if you're wanting to have that conversation, then make sure when you reach out that you have ability maybe in that moment, if I have it, to have that conversation as well.
I love it. I love it. And or if you have a larger conversation, schedule it. I mean,
Yep.
make sure that you say, hey, this may take a little while, so maybe we should talk next week or something like that. So that way you
Yep.
guys can go ahead and schedule it. So, because I can't imagine these would be really fast conversations. I mean, they're very in depth, and especially if people don't know what they're doing, they may need a lot of explanation, a lot of background, a lot of information about why, how and why. I mean, I know for me, I would probably say, why is that important? But asking those questions is important because that's how we learn and that's how we're better insurance agents.
Absolutely.
I love it. Aura, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on here and talking to us about this because I think it's super important and it's something that a lot of people are not talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. This has been Aurora Mullett. She's with Sky Insurance Brokers out of California. And you know what? She is amazing. Reach out, talk to her about maybe what's going on in your state and or reach out to your state organizations. Be a part of the solution. Be a part of your community. Be an advocate for your community. We talk about being risk managers. We talk about making sure that we protect our clients, but protecting our clients goes beyond our computer. It goes beyond our desk, and it goes by being a part of the community, both legislatively, both with creating change and with delivering the change directly to our clients. So make sure that you get on out there and advocate for your clients across the board so that we can all be better tomorrow and create a better tomorrow, better insurance, a better insurance journey, and a better insurance product at the end of the day for all of our clients. So everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Again, my name is Teresa Kitchens with the Power Women in Insurance podcast with Aurora Mullett. And we are honored to be able to be here every single Wednesday with you. So check us out on all the major podcast platforms, and we will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.